Welcome to my channel, and today I want to share a story that will make you believe in truth and second chances. It's about a woman who thought her past was buried forever, until the man she loved returned from the shadows. Let's start. The woman stepped out of the black luxury car with slow, measured grace, as though the ground itself deserved respect before her feet touched it. Her long white dress flowed gently in the warm air, clean and flawless, brushing against polished shoes that reflected the sun like glass. A man in a dark suit hurried to open the door for her, bowing his head slightly as she stepped away from the vehicle. She smiled, calm and confident, and began walking toward the tall building that rose above the busy street like a monument to power and wealth. People turned their heads as she passed. Some slowed their steps, others stopped completely. She was beautiful in a quiet, commanding way that did not need effort. Her name was Zainabu Okoye, a woman known in social circles, a woman married to one of the wealthiest businessmen in the city. Her husband's name was Adekunle Balogun. They lived in a massive house on the hill, surrounded by gates, guards, and silence. The house had many rooms, many lights, and many things, but very little warmth. Zainabu had everything most people dreamed of: money, designer clothes, respect, comfort. Her name opened doors. Her face appeared in magazines. Her life looked perfect from the outside. But that afternoon, as she walked beneath the burning sun, something unseen was already moving toward her. Something buried deep in the past. Something that would crack open everything she thought she knew about her life. Zainabu walked past rows of small shops lining the street. The air was thick with dust and heat. Vendors shouted over one another, calling out prices for fruit and roasted corn. Children ran barefoot between stalls, laughing, chasing one another with careless joy. The city was alive, loud, and unforgiving. She held her purse closer to her side, aware of the crowd but not afraid. Her driver remained by the car behind her, watching from a distance. Zainabu wanted to buy something small that day. A simple gift for her husband. Something thoughtful. Something to pretend that everything between them was still normal. Then she saw him. A man sat on the ground near the edge of the street, leaning against a cracked wall. His clothes were torn and stained. His skin was covered in dust and sweat. His hair was untrimmed, his beard uneven. One of his legs bent unnaturally beneath him, twisted in a way that made her stomach tighten. He had no shoes. In his hand was a small cup, scratched and faded, resting on the ground in front of him. People dropped coins into it without looking at his face. Zainabu stopped walking. Her heart slammed against her chest so hard it stole her breath. The sounds of the street faded into noise, distant and hollow. The man slowly lifted his head. Their eyes met. Zainabu's lips parted, but no sound came out. She knew those eyes. They were older now, surrounded by pain and exhaustion. But she knew them the same way one knows their own reflection in the mirror. She knew that face, thinner, harder, broken, but unmistakably his. Kwame Mensah. Her first husband. The man she married 12 years ago. The man she loved. The man she believed was dead. Everyone believed he was dead. But there he was, sitting on the ground like a shadow of the past, begging for coins. Zainabu felt her legs weaken. A wave of dizziness washed over her, and for a moment she thought she would fall. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run. She wanted to wake up. But she did nothing. Kwame stared at her without blinking. There was no smile, no greeting, no anger, just a long, heavy stare that cut deeper than words ever could. Suddenly, Zainabu turned away. She walked back toward the car as fast as she could without running. Her hands shook violently. The driver opened the door, surprised by the fear on her face. But she did not speak. She climbed inside and closed the door behind her. As the car pulled away, Zainabu pressed her back against the seat, her breath uneven. Her mind was chaos. Questions crashing into one another. Fear tangled with guilt. Memories clawing their way to the surface. How was Kwame alive? Why was he on the street? What happened to him? She told herself it was not real. That grief was playing tricks on her mind. That it could not be him. But deep inside, she knew the truth. That night, Zainabu could not eat. She sat at the long dining table in her house, the polished surface reflecting the chandelier above. Adekunle talked endlessly about business deals, new investments, future travel plans. His voice filled the room, confident and proud. Zainabu nodded at the right moments. She smiled when expected, but she heard nothing. Her mind was still on the street, on the man with the broken leg, on the eyes that once looked at her with love. Adekunle noticed the distance in her face and asked if she was feeling well. Zainabu smiled and said yes. It was a lie. She went to bed early, but sleep refused to come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Kwame's face, his twisted leg, the empty cup, the life she left behind. She felt sick. By morning, Zainabu knew she could not ignore it. She told the driver to take her back to the same street. She did not tell Adekunle. She wore simple clothes that day, a plain dress, a scarf covering her hair, dark glasses to hide her face. She did not want to be recognized. She did not want to be seen. The driver stopped the car far from the street. Zainabu walked alone. Her heart pounded with every step. When she reached the place where she had seen Kwame, he was gone. Her chest tightened. She looked around, panic rising. She approached a woman selling bread nearby and asked about the beggar who usually sat there. The woman said he came every afternoon. Zainabu thanked her and walked away slowly. At exactly 3 o'clock that afternoon, she returned. The street was crowded again, the same noise, the same heat. And there he was. Kwame sat in the same place, his cup in front of him. Zainabu walked toward him. Her legs felt like stone. Kwame lifted his head and saw her. This time, he did not look away. She stopped in front of him. Neither of them spoke. Then Kwame broke the silence. Zainabu. Just her name. Nothing more. Her eyes filled with tears. In the past, long buried, finally began to rise. Zainabu stood in front of Kwame as if time itself had frozen around them. The street continued to move. People walked past, voices rose and fell, coins dropped into cups. But for her, everything had narrowed to the man sitting on the ground before her. The man she once called her husband. The man whose death had been confirmed with tears, prayers, and burial clothes that were never worn. Kwame's voice was quiet when he spoke her name, but it carried the weight of years lost and questions unanswered. Zainabu felt her knees weaken. She slowly lowered herself onto the edge of the pavement, ignoring the dust, ignoring the stares of strangers. Her eyes searched his face, every line telling a story of pain she had never known. "I thought you were gone," she whispered at last. "They told me you were dead." Kwame let out a dry laugh that held no humor. He looked away, his gaze drifting toward the road where cars passed without slowing. "Dead would have been easier," he said, "for both of us." Zainabu swallowed hard. She wanted to reach for him, to touch his hand, to confirm that he was real. But fear held her back. Fear of what she might feel, fear of what he might say. "What happened to you?" she asked. Kwame shifted slightly, wincing as his injured leg moved. "Life happened," he replied, "and people happened." Zainabu's chest tightened. Memories flooded her mind. Simple days in a small rented house, shared meals, dreams spoken in whispers at night. Back then, they had nothing but hope. Kwame worked hard, taking any job he could find. Zainabu sold handmade goods and believed love would be enough. Then the accident came. Kwame's voice grew distant as he spoke. "That night, when I was hit by the truck, I didn't die, but I wished I had. My leg was crushed. The hospital treated me like I was already gone. No money, no insurance, no one to speak for me." Zainabu covered her mouth with her hand, tears sliding down her cheeks. "They moved me to a public ward," Kwame continued. "Then one day they told me I was discharged. They wheeled me outside and left me there. I couldn't walk. I couldn't work. I couldn't even find my way home." Zainabu shook her head slowly. "Why didn't you come back to me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why didn't you send word?" Kwame finally looked at her. His eyes were sharp now, filled with something deeper than anger. "Because by the time I could stand on my own again, you were gone." Her breath caught. "I went to the house," he said. "It was empty. Neighbors said you had left the city. No address. No message, nothing." Zainabu closed her eyes. She remembered that time clearly. The debt, the eviction notice, the pressure from relatives telling her to think of survival, not love. And then Adekunle Balogun entered her life. Polite, wealthy, confident. A man who offered security when she was drowning in fear. "I thought you were dead," she said again weakly. "I waited, I cried, I prayed. Then, I had no choice." Kwame smiled sadly. "There is always a choice," he said, "but I understand why you made yours." Silence stretched between them. Zainabu reached into her purse and pulled out money, placing it gently into his cup. Immediately, shame burned through her. He noticed. "Don't," Kwame said softly. "I don't want your pity." "It's not pity," she replied quickly. "It's care." Kwame looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slightly. "Then let me tell you everything," he said. "So you know what care truly costs." Over the next hour, Kwame spoke. He told her about sleeping under bridges, about days without food, about being chased away like an animal. He spoke of his leg growing worse, of pain that never left him, of hope that slowly died. Zainabu listened without interruption, tears soaking her scarf. When he finished, the sun was beginning to set. "I'm married now," she said quietly. Kwame nodded, as if he already knew. "I saw the rings, the cars, the clothes. I knew you had survived." She hesitated. "He is a good man," she said, though the words felt empty. Kwame smiled faintly. "Good men don't erase the past," he replied. Zainabu stood slowly. "I can't leave you like this," she said. "Please, let me help you." Kwame looked away again. "Help has a price," he said, "and I don't know if you're ready to pay it." That night, Zainabu returned home heavier than she had ever been. Adekunle noticed her silence, but she brushed off his questions. She lay awake in their large bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking of the man on the street. The next morning, she made a decision. She arranged for Kwame to be taken to a clinic under a false name. She paid for treatment, she paid for food, she paid for shelter. But what she did not realize was that secrets, once awakened, do not stay quiet. Adekunle was beginning to notice, and the past was no longer willing to remain hidden. Zainabu began to live two lives. By day, she was Adekunle Balogun's wife, the elegant woman who attended gatherings, smiled at business partners, and represented wealth with quiet dignity. By night, she became someone else entirely, a woman carrying a past she could no longer outrun. Every evening, after Adekunle fell asleep or became busy with his endless calls, Zainabu lay awake, staring into the darkness, replaying Kwame's words again and again. She had moved Kwame into a small rented room near the clinic. It was clean, modest, and far from the streets where shame had wrapped itself around him for years. A nurse visited daily. His leg was examined carefully, and though the damage was permanent, the pain was now managed. For the first time in years, Kwame slept on a bed instead of concrete. Yet comfort did not erase bitterness. Zainabu visited him often, always dressed simply, always careful not to be seen. When she entered the room, Kwame would sit quietly, watching her as if trying to understand the woman she had become. "You look different," he said one afternoon. She smiled faintly. "So do you." "No," Kwame replied. "I look like life treated me honestly. You look like life dressed you up and hid the truth." His words stung, but she did not argue. She knew there was truth in them. As days passed, old memories resurfaced between them. Small laughs, shared dreams, moments that once felt unbreakable. But alongside those memories came silence, heavy and uncomfortable. There were questions neither of them asked aloud. One evening, Kwame spoke again. "Does he know about me?" Zainabu shook her head. "No." "Will you tell him?" "I don't know," she answered honestly. Kwame nodded. "Then your help is borrowed time," he said, "and borrowed time always runs out." At home, Adekunle had begun to notice changes. Zainabu was distant. She left the house more often. She avoided his eyes during conversations. He was not a foolish man. Years in business had taught him to recognize patterns. One night, during dinner, he put his fork down and looked at her closely. "You are somewhere else," he said calmly. and it has nothing to do with me. Zainabu forced a smile. You're imagining things. Adekunle did not push further, but his silence spoke loudly. Days later, Adekunle's assistant quietly informed him that his wife had been visiting a clinic under a different name. The report was careful, respectful, but clear. Adekunle felt something shift inside him. Meanwhile, Kwame struggled with his own conflict. Being cared for by Zainabu reopened wounds he had buried deep. He was grateful, but pride burned inside him. Every coin, every meal reminded him of what he had lost, not just health, but dignity. One afternoon, he asked her a question that stopped her heart. If I had come back strong and successful, he said, would you have left him for me? Zainabu looked at him, unable to answer. Her silence was the answer. Kwame closed his eyes. Then don't ruin your life for guilt, he said. Help me stand, then let me walk away. Zainabu reached for his hand. This time, he did not pull away. At home, Adekunle finally confronted her. I know there is someone, he said quietly. Not a lover, but someone from before. Zainabu felt the room spin. Who told you? I didn't need anyone to tell me, Adekunle replied. Your silence did. She sat down slowly and told him part of the truth, but not all. She spoke of a man she once knew, a man in need. She did not say husband. She did not say love. Adekunle listened without interrupting. When she finished, he stood up. Secrets destroy foundations, he said, and I built my life on stability. That night, Zainabu cried alone. Kwame, in his small room, stared at the ceiling, realizing that survival had come at a terrible cost. And somewhere between them, the truth waited. Patient, unavoidable, and heavy. The silence in the Balogun house grew heavy, stretching across days like a thick fog that refused to lift. Adekunle moved through the rooms with quiet precision, polite but distant, as if something invisible now stood between him and Zainabu. Their conversations became short and careful, each word chosen to avoid deeper wounds. Zainabu felt the weight of her choices pressing down on her chest. She had wanted to help Kwame without destroying her present, but the past was not content with being a visitor. It wanted recognition. It wanted payment. One afternoon, Adekunle returned home earlier than expected. He found Zainabu sitting alone in the living room, her hands folded tightly in her lap. I went to the clinic today, he said calmly. Her heart dropped. I saw him. Zainabu looked up slowly. Her voice shook. You followed me? I followed the truth, Adekunle replied. You should have trusted me with it. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Adekunle continued. He is not just someone from before. He is your husband. Zainabu's eyes filled with tears. He was, she said, before everyone believed he was dead. Adekunle exhaled deeply. There was no anger in his face, only disappointment mixed with confusion. And now he is alive, he said. And now he is here. Yes. Adekunle sat down across from her. Did you love him? Zainabu nodded slowly. Do you still? She hesitated. I care for him, but my life is with you now. Adekunle closed his eyes briefly. Life does not move in straight lines, he said, but it demands honesty. Meanwhile, Kwame was learning to walk short distances with support. Each step felt like a battle between pain and pride. The nurse encouraged him, reminding him that progress was not measured by speed, but by persistence. One evening, Adekunle arrived at Kwame's room alone. Kwame looked up, surprised but calm. He had expected this moment. I am Adekunle Balogun, Adekunle said, the man she married. Kwame nodded. I know who you are. They sat in silence, two men connected by one woman, and a past neither of them had chosen. I did not steal her from you, Adekunle said eventually. I married a widow. Kwame smiled faintly. And I died without a grave. Adekunle met his gaze. What do you want now? Kwame did not answer immediately. He looked at his injured leg, then at the small room. I want dignity, he said. I want to stand without begging. I want to live without being a secret. Adekunle absorbed the words. And Zainabu, Kwame's voice softened. She deserves peace. Whether that peace includes me or not. Adekunle stood. Then we are not enemies, he said. When Zainabu learned of the meeting, fear gripped her. But when Adekunle told her everything, something unexpected happened. Relief. He will leave the city once he is stable, Adekunle said. I will help him start again somewhere else. Zainabu's tears fell freely. Thank you, she whispered. But that night, Kwame spoke differently. I cannot disappear like a ghost again, he told her. I need closure, and so do you. Zainabu knew he was right. Truth had been delayed long enough, and now it was ready to collect its price. The days that followed felt heavier than all the years before them. Zainabu moved through her home as if she were walking through a place that no longer belonged to her. Every corner held memories of comfort and security, yet her heart remained unsettled. The truth had surfaced, but peace had not yet arrived. Kwame continued his recovery quietly. He practiced walking each morning, leaning on a simple support, refusing unnecessary help. Pain remained his constant companion, but so did determination. The bitterness that once hardened his voice had softened into something more reflective, shaped by long suffering and slow healing. One afternoon, Zainabu visited him and found him standing by the window, looking out at the street below. I will leave soon, he said without turning around. Her chest tightened. You don't have to rush, she replied. I do, Kwame said. If I stay, I become a wound that never closes. She stepped closer. Where will you go? Somewhere I am not a reminder, he said. In somewhere I can build something with what remains of me. At home, Adekunle prepared quietly for that separation. He arranged work, documents, and support for Kwame to begin again in another city. It was not forgiveness driven by emotion, but by principle. Adekunle believed that unresolved pasts destroyed futures, and he refused to let that happen. Still, there was one moment left that could not be avoided. Zainabu knew she had to choose, not between two men, but between two versions of herself. The woman she once was, and the woman she had become. She visited Kwame one final time before his departure. The room was filled with evening light, soft and golden. I owe you my life, Kwame said quietly. Not because you saved me, but because you faced me. Zainabu shook her head. I owe you truth, she replied. And I failed you once. Kwame smiled gently. You survived, he said. That is not failure. They sat together in silence, understanding that love does not always end in togetherness. Sometimes it ends in release. At home, Zainabu spoke openly with Adekunle for the first time in years. No hiding, no careful wording, just honesty. Adekunle listened. When she finished, he took her hand. If we move forward, he said, it will be without shadows. She nodded, tears in her eyes. The night before Kwame left, Zainabu could not sleep. She stood at the window, watching the city lights, realizing that some chapters do not close loudly. They end quietly, with acceptance. The morning came. Kwame left the city with a small bag, a repaired body, and a future that was uncertain, but his own. Zainabu watched the road long after he was gone, and for the first time, she felt the weight begin to lift. After Kwame left, the Balogun house became strangely quiet. It was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of a room that had been emptied of something important. Zainabu moved through her days with a strange numbness. She was grateful that the truth was no longer hidden, but she could not shake the feeling that something inside her had been left behind with Kwame. Adekunle noticed it too. He watched her with careful eyes, trying to understand what remained unsaid. He did not push her, but he did not ignore her either. In his own way, he was trying to be patient. But patience has limits when the heart is not certain. One evening, Zainabu walked to the balcony and stared at the city below. The lights were bright, the air warm. People moved like tiny stars across the roads, living their lives without knowing how many secrets others carried. She heard footsteps behind her. Adekunle stood there, silent for a moment, then spoke softly. "You are not the same woman who came into my life," he said. Zainabu turned to face him. "I never was," she replied. Adekunle nodded slowly. "I know," he said, "but I still chose you." Zainabu's eyes filled with tears. "And I chose you too," she whispered. They stood together for a long time without touching. It felt like the first time they had ever been honest. Then Adekunle spoke again, his voice calm but firm. "There is something you must know," he said, "something I kept from you." Zainabu's heart stopped. "What is it?" she asked. Adekunle hesitated. "The day you told me you were a widow," he said, "I believed you. I accepted your pain, but I also believed you were hiding something else." Zainabu's breath caught. "What?" Adekunle looked away, his face tight with emotion. "I was wrong," he admitted. "You were not hiding anything. You were only trying to survive." Zainabu felt a sudden wave of relief and sorrow at the same time. She had expected anger. She had expected blame, but not this. "I'm sorry," Adekunle said, turning back to her. "I didn't trust you enough. I should have." Zainabu shook her head. "You didn't know," she said. "How could you?" Adekunle nodded. "Yes," he replied. "I didn't know." For the first time since the truth came out, Zainabu felt hope. But hope was not enough to erase the past. Days later, Zainabu received a message from someone she did not recognize. The message was simple. "I know where Kwame is." Her hands trembled. She stared at the message for a long time. She did not know who had sent it or why. She tried to ignore it. But the mind does not easily forget a name it once loved. The next morning, she received another message. "If you want to see him again, meet me." Zainabu's heart raced. She did not want to involve Adekunle. She did not want to drag him into a world of past pain. But she also could not ignore it. She had already lied once. She could not lie again. She decided to go. She told herself it would be just a meeting. A chance to confirm that Kwame was safe, that he was alive, that he was moving on. But deep down, she knew this was not a simple meeting. Something else was coming, something that would test the fragile peace she had built. Zainabu stood in front of the small cafe, her hands trembling as she clutched her purse. The air was thick with the scent of roasted coffee and street food. The place was busy, filled with people laughing, talking, and living without knowing the storm that was about to break. She checked her phone again. No new messages. She had been told to come alone. No one else. No calls. No interruptions. Her heart pounded like a drum in her chest. She felt the weight of her past pulling her back. Inside the cafe, she sat at a table near the window, trying to appear calm. She ordered water, though her throat felt dry. She watched the door, waiting for someone to approach. Minutes passed. Then a man entered. He was not old. He was not young. He wore a simple shirt and trousers, his face calm and expressionless. His eyes scanned the room quickly, then locked onto Zainabu's. He approached her table without hesitation. "Zainabu Okoye," he said softly. She nodded, unable to speak. The man sat across from her. He did not introduce himself. He did not apologize for the fear he had caused. Instead, he handed her a folded envelope. Inside was a photo of Kwame, but he was not alone. In the photo, Kwame stood beside a woman Zainabu had never seen. The woman was smiling, holding Kwame's hand. She looked happy, strong, and confident. Zainabu stared at the photo, her mind racing. "Who is she?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The man's expression remained unchanged. "She is the woman he is building a life with," he said. "He is not alone." Zainabu felt a strange relief at that, but it was quickly replaced by something else. Anger. "Why are you showing me this?" she demanded. The man leaned forward. "Because he told me to," he said. "He said you would come. He said you still cared." Zainabu's eyes filled with tears. "He said you were the reason he left," the man continued. "He said you were the reason he survived. And he said you were the reason he wanted to start again." Zainabu shook her head. "I didn't ask him to leave," she said. "I told him to stay." The man nodded. "And he did," For a while, but he couldn't live as a secret forever. Zainabu looked at him, her face pale. "Where is he?" she asked. The man paused. Then he said, "He is in another city now, but he asked me to tell you something." Zainabu held her breath. "What?" she asked. The man's voice softened. "He wants you to forgive yourself," he said, "and he wants you to live your life without guilt." Zainabu's eyes burned. She swallowed hard. "Is that all?" she asked. The man shook his head. "No," he said. "He also said you should know the truth about why he disappeared." Zainabu's heart stopped. "What truth?" she asked. The man looked at her with a seriousness that made her feel cold. "He said you were not the only one who suffered," he replied. "He said someone else paid the price too." Zainabu felt her breath catch. The man stood up, leaving the envelope on the table. "He told me to give you this," he said, "and to tell you not to search for him again." Zainabu watched him leave, her mind in chaos. She sat there for a long time, staring at the photo, her hands shaking. Someone else had suffered. Someone else had paid the price, and now the truth was not only about her, it was about everyone. Zainabu sat in the quiet of her room, the photo still in her hands. The image of Kwame and the unknown woman haunted her like a shadow she couldn't shake. She tried to focus on the words the man had spoken, but her mind kept returning to one question. Who else had suffered? She stared at the photo until the ink seemed to blur. Her heart felt heavy, not with guilt now, but with confusion. She had believed her pain was her own. She had believed that the life she built with Adekunle was the only life she had left. But now she understood that her story was connected to others in ways she never imagined. The next day, Zainabu went to see her friend Amina, a woman who had always been loyal and wise. Amina was not someone who judged. She listened. She understood. When Zainabu entered the small living room, Amina stood up and hugged her without asking questions. "You look like you have seen a ghost," Amina said softly. Zainabu sat down, her hands trembling. "I saw him," she said, "but he is not the same man I knew." Amina nodded. "People change when they suffer," she said. "But sometimes they also change when they survive." Zainabu told her everything, the message, the photo, the stranger's words. She spoke without stopping, as if the words would somehow free her from the weight she carried. Amina listened carefully. When Zainabu finished, Amina remained silent for a long moment. Then she said, "You need to know the truth." Zainabu looked at her. "What truth?" Amina took a deep breath. "Your husband did not disappear by accident," she said. "Someone wanted him gone." Zainabu's heart stopped. Amina continued, "I remember that night, the night you were told he died. I was there. I saw the truck, I saw the people, and I saw something else." Zainabu's eyes widened. "What?" Amina's voice was low. "I saw men in suits," she said. "They were not from this city. They were not here by chance. They came to make sure he never came back." Zainabu's hands shook. "Why?" she whispered. Amina looked at her with sorrow. "Because he knew something," she said. "Something he was not supposed to know." Zainabu felt a cold wave run through her body. "What did he know?" Amina hesitated. "I don't know everything," she said. "But I know enough to tell you this. Kwame was not only a man who loved you, he was also a man who was caught in a dangerous game." Zainabu's mind raced. She thought of the small jobs Kwame used to do, the quiet meetings, the late-night calls, the way he would sometimes disappear for hours and return with tired eyes. She had never questioned it. She had only trusted him. Now she understood that trust had a price. That night, Zainabu returned home with a new fear. The truth was no longer just a memory. It was a threat. She sat with Adekunle in the living room, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "Amina told me something," she said quietly. Adekunle looked at her with concern. "What?" he asked. Zainabu swallowed hard. "Kwame didn't die by accident," she said. "Someone wanted him gone." Adekunle's face changed. The calm expression he always wore shifted into something sharper. He stood up slowly and walked to the window, staring out into the dark city. Tell me everything, he said. Zainabu did. And as she spoke, she realized that her life was no longer just her own. It belonged to the truth. The moment Zainabu spoke the words aloud, the room seemed to become colder. Adekunle's eyes narrowed as he processed the meaning behind them. He did not speak immediately. Instead, he walked to the table and poured himself a glass of water, his hands steady. He looked calm, but Zainabu could see the tension beneath the surface. You know something else, Adekunle said quietly. You are hiding something from me. Zainabu shook her head. No, she replied. I told you everything I know. Adekunle stared at her for a moment, then said, There are people in this city who don't like you. Zainabu's heart pounded. Why would anyone hate me? Why? Adekunle looked away. Because you are connected to Kwame, he said, and Kwame was connected to something dangerous. Zainabu felt her throat tighten. What do you mean? Adekunle took a deep breath. Kwame was not just a man who loved you, he said. He was a man who witnessed something he should not have witnessed. Zainabu stared at him. What did he witness? Adekunle hesitated. A crime, he said. A crime that involved people in power. Zainabu's heart sank. She had always known the world was not fair. She had always known that power could corrupt. But she had never imagined that the man she loved was caught in something so dangerous. You're saying he was killed, Zainabu whispered. Adekunle shook his head. I'm saying they wanted him killed, he said, and they succeeded in making him disappear. Zainabu's eyes filled with tears. But why? Why him? Adekunle's voice was low. Because he was honest, he said, and because he was close to you. Zainabu stared at him, confused. How am I connected to it? Adekunle's face grew serious. Because they believed you knew too, he said. Because they believed you were involved. Zainabu shook her head violently. I was never involved, she said. I didn't even know. Adekunle looked at her for a long moment. I believe you, he said, but they may not. Zainabu's fear grew. That night, she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The silence was no longer peaceful. It felt like a threat. She thought of the message, the photo, the stranger, and she thought of Kwame. She wondered if he had known what was coming, if he had left because he feared for his life. She realized she had been living inside a story she didn't understand. The next morning, Adekunle left the house early. Zainabu watched him go, feeling helpless. She wanted to follow him. She wanted to ask him where he was going, but she didn't. She didn't want to become a burden. Instead, she decided to do something she had never done before. She went to the police. The police station was crowded and loud. People stood in lines, waiting for help, complaining, shouting. Zainabu approached the front desk, her hands trembling. I want to report a crime, she said. The officer looked at her with suspicion. What crime? Zainabu swallowed. My husband, she said. He disappeared and I think he was taken. The officer's expression changed. Do you have proof? He asked. Zainabu shook her head. No, she said. But I have a name. The officer leaned forward. What name? Kwame Mensah, Zainabu replied. The officer paused, then looked at her with a strange expression. That name is not new, he said. We have heard it before. Zainabu felt her heart stop. What do you mean? She asked. The officer looked at her, serious. There are people who want him found, he said. And there are people who want him to stay lost. Zainabu left the station with a fear she could not explain. The truth was no longer just about her past. It was about something bigger, something that could destroy everything. After leaving the police station, Zainabu felt the city closing in around her. She walked quickly through the streets, her mind racing. She could not shake the feeling that someone was watching her. She kept turning her head, scanning the crowd, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. She returned home and found Adekunle waiting in the living room. His face was serious, but he did not look angry. You went to the police, he said quietly. Zainabu nodded. I had to, she replied. They need to know. Adekunle sat down. Did they say anything? Zainabu told him about the officer's words. She described the strange reaction when she mentioned Kwame's name. She told him that the officer said there were people who wanted Kwame found, and others who wanted him to stay lost. Adekunle's expression grew colder. "I think we are in danger," he said. Zainabu's heart pounded. "What should we do?" Adekunle stood up. "We need to find out what Kwame knew," he said, "and who he was afraid of." Zainabu nodded, fear rising in her chest. Adekunle called his assistant and asked him to check Kwame's background. Jobs, addresses, phone records, anything. Within hours he received information that made his face go pale. Kwame had been involved in a government project, a housing development that was supposed to help the poor. But the project had been corrupted. Funds were stolen. Contracts were given to companies with no experience. People had suffered. Kwame had worked as an accountant for the project, and he had found evidence of fraud. He had tried to expose it, but the wrong people had noticed, and they had decided to silence him. Zainabu felt her stomach twist. She remembered how Kwame had disappeared after his accident. She remembered the men in suits. She remembered the truck. She realized that the accident was not an accident. It was a planned event. Adekunle looked at her with determination. "We need to bring this to light," he said. "We need to expose them." Zainabu shook her head. "If we do that, we will be targets," she said. "They will come after us." Adekunle's eyes hardened. "We are already targets," he replied. "The question is whether we will be victims or fighters." Zainabu felt a mixture of fear and resolve. She had always been someone who avoided conflict. She had always believed that survival meant silence. But now, silence felt like betrayal. That night, they decided to meet with a journalist named Kofi, known for his bravery and integrity. Kofi listened carefully as Adekunle explained the situation. He asked questions, took notes, and promised to investigate. But Kofi warned them. "This is not just about money," he said. "This is about power, and power protects itself." Zainabu felt cold. "What if they come after us?" she asked. Kofi looked at her with steady eyes. "Then we will have to be ready," he said. "Truth is dangerous, but it is also the only weapon we have." The next morning, Zainabu received another message. This time it was not from a stranger. It was from Kwame. His words were short. "I am alive, I am safe, but I need you to stop." Zainabu's heart broke. Stop what? Expose the truth? Save the people? Or save herself? She stared at the message, tears streaming down her face. She knew the answer would not be simple. Zainabu stared at the message from Kwame for a long time. The words were simple, but their meaning was heavy. Stop. Stop what? Stop the investigation. Stop the truth. Stop living. Her hands trembled. She had thought the hardest part was admitting the truth to herself. But now she realized the hardest part was what came after, choosing what to do with that truth. She turned to Adekunle. He sat quietly across from her, his face tired but steady. He had not slept much since the investigation began. He had never wanted this kind of danger, but he had also never been the kind of man to back down when he knew something was wrong. "What should we do?" Zainabu asked, her voice breaking. Adekunle took her hand gently. "We do not run," he said. "We do not hide. We face it." Zainabu nodded slowly. "But Kwame asked me to stop." Adekunle's eyes softened. "He is afraid," he said. "He has been afraid for years. But fear cannot control our lives." The room was silent. Then Zainabu stood up. She walked to the window and looked out at the city. She thought of Kwame, his pain, his suffering, his strength. She thought of the life she had built with Adekunle. She thought of the truth buried beneath lies and silence. She realized that the truth was not a weapon. It was a responsibility. She returned to the table and sat down again. "I will not stop," she said quietly. "But I will not do it alone." Adekunle nodded. "Then we do it together." That night, they met with the journalist, Kofi, and shared all the evidence they had. Kofi listened carefully and promised to publish the story. He warned them again of the danger, but he also told them something that gave Zainabu strength. "Truth is stronger than fear," he said, "and when people know, they can protect each other." Days passed. the story went public. The corruption in the housing project was exposed. The people responsible were forced to answer questions. Some tried to deny it, others tried to silence the truth. But the evidence was strong, and the public pressure grew. Zainabu and Adekunle received threats. They were followed, their phones were tapped. But they were not alone. Support came from unexpected places. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers who had suffered because of the same corruption. Then, one evening, Zainabu received a call. It was Kwame. His voice was soft but steady. "You did it," he said. Zainabu's eyes filled with tears. "You told me to stop," she whispered. Kwame sighed. "I did," he said, "because I was scared. But I also knew you would not stay silent forever." Zainabu closed her eyes. "Are you safe?" she asked. "Yes," he replied. "I am safe now. I found a new life, a new home. I am rebuilding." Zainabu felt relief, but also sadness. She had loved him. She still loved him in a different way, like someone loves a chapter that has ended. Kwame continued, "I want you to live, truly live, not just survive." Zainabu nodded, tears falling silently. "I will," she said. After the call, she turned to Adekunle. He stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder. "We are free," he said softly. Zainabu looked at him and smiled. It was a small smile, but it held something new. Strength, acceptance, and peace. She had carried a heavy secret for years. She had lived in fear. She had survived. But now the truth had freed her. Not because it solved everything, but because it finally allowed her to live honestly. And in that honesty, she found a new beginning. This story shows that money can buy comfort, but it cannot buy peace. The real value in life is love, truth, and freedom. Even when the world turns its back on you, there is always a way to rise again. If you enjoyed this story, please like and share it with someone who needs hope today. And remember, never let anyone take your truth away. If you like this story, make sure you subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share with your friends and family so you don't want to miss the next powerful story coming your way. Drop a heart in comment, like and subscribe my channel. And visit my channel for more interesting story videos.